We're on page 408. We're starting a new Siman, a new chapter of Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo's Code of Jewish Law. Siman Kuf Samech Chet, chapter 168. Al eze minei pat mevarchin. On which type of bread do we make a bracha? Uvo yud zayin seifim. And in this chapter, there are 17 halachot, 17 subcategories. Aleph. Hayu lefanav chatichot shel pat. If there were slices of bread in front of you, pieces of bread, ufat shalem, and there's also a whole loaf of bread in front of you. Hakol mimin echad. It's all from one type of flour. This is a weekday or it's Shabbat? This is a weekday. We're not talking here about Shabbatot. Mevarech al hashalem. You should make hamotzi on the whole loaf of bread and not on the slice. Afilu hupat kibar. Even if the whole loaf is, what's kibar bread? Look at perush. This means lechem sheino naki. Bread that's not clean. What do you mean not clean? It's not refined bread. So Chachamim have different levels of flour. You know, there's very fine flour. There's flour that's very coarse. There's flour that has all kinds of chaff and stuff stuck in there, and all kinds of other things there. It's not the highest quality flour.
And also some of the loaves have flour on the outside. It's like you have to dust it off.
Right. Though I don't think he's referring to that. Meaning, the loaf of bread is lower quality than the slices of bread. I mean, the loaf is small. It's a small loaf of bread. It's not a very significant loaf, but it's small. It's a little roll. And it's made from not the best quality flour. And the slice of bread is from a higher quality flour, and it's bigger. So you prefer the whole loaf over the small slice. The small loaf over the big slice. The unrefined flour that's in a whole loaf over a refined flour. Refined, I'm not talking to here about Wonder Bread. Yeah, I'm talking to, a higher quality flour. אבל אם השלם משעורים והחתיכות מחיטים.
The Rambam in the Mishnah Torah that talks about that he says that the best bread is a sifted flour, but with a little bit of the bran in it. He talks about different levels of the flour, which is interesting.
What is chita and what is seora? Let's get our 7 species down. Chita is wheat. Seora is barley. But if the whole loaf is made out of barley, v'chatichot michitim, and the slices are from wheat, afilu hiktana, even if it's a small loaf, maniach haprusa atachar hashlema, you put the slice underneath the loaf, uvotzea mishtehen yachad, and you do hamotzi on both of them together. Says the Rama adds in Rashi's script, v'chol zeh ksherotze lechol mishnehem. This is only in a situation where you were planning to eat from both the slice and the loaf. But if you only want to eat the slice or you only want to eat the loaf, then you eat from whichever one you want to eat from. And you don't have to be concerned with the other one, even if it's more important or even if you like it more, but you weren't planning to eat it. The whole reason why you have preference is which one do you make a hamotzi on, because you're planning to eat both of them. But if you're not planning to eat both of them, then only make hamotzi on the one you want. So you're sitting at a wedding and there's a bread basket. There's all kinds of different, they have it at the wedding. There's whole wheat bread and rye bread and sourdough bread and white bread and all kinds of breads over there. Now, which one of those you have to make a hamotzi on? It could be that there's one that is if you're going to eat all of them. But if you just want to have one of them, that I want the whole wheat one. Who cares that the other one might be, maybe you like white flour. A lot of people, they like the taste of the white flour, sugar, egg, cinnamon challah over the whole wheat one. But you don't want to eat that one because it's not so good for you. You want to eat the whole wheat, so you can choose the whole wheat one, even though it's the one that you prefer less. Because it's the only one you're going to eat. It's not disrespectful to hamotzi that you choose the inferior challah, so to speak. I'm talking about personal preference. Yes?
This is curious to me. So if you're planning on eating all of them, there's an order of preference.
Yeah.
The Ramah is saying specifically not your preference.
No, it might be your preference.
Isn't barley considered?
Afish chashuv, there are some that are objectively preferable, or chaviv alav, or it's subjectively preferable. We're gonna have to deal with the details soon.
Doesn't it say somewhere in Brachot about how barley is considered the food of an animal?
Yeah, look, the source of this is from Brachot. This source here.
So we haven't dealt with what your preference is.
Not yet. Do you know what I'm thinking we should do? We should probably do a few more of the Shulchan Aruch itself to get the bigger picture, and then go back to the details. So if you'll bear with me, let's do this together. Halacha bet. That's going to be on page 413. Im shtehen shlemot. In your book it says im shteh shlemot. I don't know what the... Im shtehen shlemot b'min echad. If they're both whole loaves of bread and they're both from the same species, and the same type of flour. Achad goda v'achad ktana, one is large and one is small. Mevarech la gedola. You make a beracha on the larger one. Im yesh la'adam sheneh chatze'ei lechem. If a person has 2 half loaves of bread, ve'en lechem shalem, and he doesn't have a whole loaf of bread, yichaberem yachad be'etz or b'shum davar shelo yeh nireh v'dino kedin shalem. He should take a toothpick or something that can connect the two of them together so that you can't see that connector. You stick them together so it looks the same. V'afilu b'Shabbat yichol lechaberam. And even on Shabbat you're allowed to do this. What's the special thing about Shabbat? So we're going to have to look if it's lechem mishneh. Maybe you're afraid of building something on Shabbat. Who knows? But bottom line is you're allowed to do this even on Shabbat.
So that would be like on Shabbat, you had the local challah and it fell in half under its own weight.
Correct.
You just put it together. Like squish it back together. Not at your edge. Or anything.
It seems to be that the real issue here is that of lechem mishneh. You want to have a complete loaf? You're allowed to do this on Shabbat as long as you can't tell. You have to be a professional cut,
So could you just squish it together like that?
We'll deal with the details. I'm trying to paint for you now a bigger picture because I feel if we zoom in on the first case without knowing the second case or the third case, then we won't really know what we're talking about. Gimel. That's on page 414. Shnei geluskaot. What are geluskaot?
Cakes.
In this context, they're just 2 loaves of bread. Hadvukim yachad, that are stuck together, shenefu, that were baked. V'nechtach min achat, v'ashniya nishara shleman. You cut from one, and the other one stayed whole. Tov lafrid ha'chadicha me'ashlema. It's proper to separate the piece from the whole loaf, kedei sheteh niret shlema, so that it looks whole. Mimash yenichena davuk ba af al pi shneret yoter gdola. You ever see this in a commercial bakery? You'll go buy a challah and they're like all stuck together. You kind of have to separate them from each other. Mm-hmm. So imagine you separate one. It happens in Israel, like in the shuk. You separate a challah, you get a challah and a half. Yeah, so you take the other piece, but now you're really dealing with 1.5 challah. So is it better to have a 1.5 because now it's a bigger challah, or do you separate the half from the one so that it looks like a whole challah? Maran says it's better to have a whole challah than a 1.5 challah. Even though the 1.5 looks bigger, you want a whole versus the size. Now, obviously, when we go through the sources, we're gonna have to understand, like, what are we trying to get at? What's the point of all of this? We didn't get that far yet. Haga says Rama, lo yiftzah mimena b'makom she'ayta dvuka b'chaverta. You shouldn't cut from the place where it was stuck. Shesham niret kifrusa, because there it looks like it was cut. And you should cut from the part that wasn't stuck. So Rama says, you know that like part of the challah where it has a leftover piece from the last challah? You know what I'm talking about? Like the bottom side of the challah. Don't cut from there. When you eat your hamotzi, take from somewhere that's whole. That's the Rama's addition. Comes from the Maharil. Pat se'orin, bread that's made out of barley. Ufat kusemin. What's kusmin? Now that became a big thing in Israel. When I was in Israel, I was looking for whole wheat challah. Everybody was trying to sell me these challah. What's kusmin? Okay, now I'm going to make a disclaimer. This disclaimer is important, especially as Pesach is coming up. I don't actually know what the 5 grains are in English. Why am I telling you that? Because it's not so clear to us that the 5 grains identified by the Jewish community, especially by the German-French Jewish community, are actually the 5 grains that were indigenous to the land of Israel and are really the grains from Israel. There's a famous professor, Yehuda Felix, who wrote essays. He was an expert in the fauna and flora of Eretz Yisrael. Thank you. He wrote many essays on this topic and books on this topic, and he was convinced, for example, that oats are not indigenous to Eretz Yisrael. Oats are the rabbis of France obviously identified oats as one of the 5 grains, but the rabbis in Israel and Babylonia had no idea what that was. And there are some poskim that take that into consideration and would consider oats not to be chametz at all. Now, we don't do that here. I do recommend to people, if you have some kind of problem eating matzot, don't eat oat matzot. Because it could be that you're eating a potato matzah. It could be that it's not even one of the 5 grains.
Doesn't meet the obligations.
I'm telling you to be strict in both directions. Don't eat it on Pesach, and don't eat it as your matzah, because it doesn't meet in order for something to be matzah, it has to be able to be chametz. You'll see now gluten-free matzot in the stores. They're made out of potato flour. It's just a potato in the shape of a matzah. Just eat a potato. There's no difference. I mean, just because it looks like a matzah doesn't mean you can use it for your seder. So what do people do who can't have flour or gluten? Fine, so come talk to Tamir Chacham. You might be exempt from eating a matzah if you can't eat a matzah, but don't go looking for potato matzah. But now, Pesach is coming. All of those things that people eat on Pesach, all of the cakes and the cookies and the cereals, it's all potatoes and sugar and chocolate. It's not even real chocolate, it's like fake chocolate. But potatoes and sugar. You imagine you get one of those raspberry, you see them, they sell them, sorry Zeva. It's like, it comes in those packages, I see them in Ralph's. It's like pink, green, and yellow cookies with raspberry jam in between. Now the raspberry jam, never saw a raspberry, never met a raspberry before. The cookie is made out of potato starch and sugar, and the chocolate on top. So essentially it would be like going home, taking a potato, putting it in the oven, coating it with sugar, spraying some raspberry jam on it, and having that for dinner. It's amazing to me what people who have decided to prohibit all kinds of real kasher Pesach foods on themselves are now resorting to eating because they can't eat the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually let us eat on Pesach. It reaches a place where Pesach, for some people, has terrible problems. People have digestion problems, people have stomach problems, people have bloating issues, all kinds of crazy things are going with them on Pesach. So this is important. What you're hearing, it's Torah what you're hearing now. HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't say, Pesach is coming, suffer. Pesach is coming, all the bread that you make in your house, don't eat it anymore. Just for 8 days. Eat a different kind of bread. That's all that happened. That's the only thing that changed on Pesach. Your whole Pesach experience would be different if people actually follow, I'm not telling you to go back to biblical Judaism, rabbinic Judaism. With a Talmud, with a Rambam, with a Shulchan Aruch, you can still eat your regular food. It's still a little too early. We haven't got to Purim yet. We're going on a crusade. Imagine if you were living in Mexico. Yeah. Let's say I'm in Oaxaca. I like Oaxaca. Good food. Yeah. You're in Oaxaca and you have food. Now it's Pesach that comes. What do you have to change about how you eat? Should I tell you? So what do you have? You have rice and corn and beans, yeah, and chicken and meat and fish, yeah, and then you have tortillas, wheat tortillas and corn tortillas. The only thing you have to do is switch to corn tortillas for 8 days, and if you want wheat tortillas, you just have to make sure that you bake them fast enough that they don't become chametz. So what does a person who lives in Oaxaca change for Pesach? Absolutely nothing. What do people do today? Aluminum foil on the countertops, lining their refrigerators with special kosher for Pesach papers, putting plastic inserts into their sinks, and buying special kosher le Pesach water, special kosher le Pesach soap, and special kosher. They have lists of which toothpaste you can use on Pesach. They have Sponges, kosher lePesach. Why the olive oil the whole year? That's olive oil you can't use, and you have to buy a special kosher olive oil. The cow can't even eat chametz before you take the milk from the cow nowadays. People buy special milk that is kosher for Pesach. The eggs, they buy eggs before Pesach, because maybe the chicken ate a grain. I don't know what happened to the chicken. You know what else the chicken eats the whole year? You don't want to know. You would never eat an egg again. People, the whole world turns upside down. It's I'm going to borrow it, an unorganic form of Judaism. It's not sufficient. It's not self-sufficient. And ultimately people suffer from it. It was a custom, it was somewhere in one place in the world where people did such things. Good, sure left it there.
But couldn't by the same logic say, because chickens eat shiratzim, they eat bugs and so forth, which are not kosher, that you shouldn't eat chicken if they eat chametz and you can't eat it?
I've asked this question so many times that I can't even. The same people who can't put liquids on their matzot, so why can you put matzah in your mouth? If the water makes the matzah rise again, by the way, it's an interesting thing, because there's another religion that believes that things rise again on Pesach time. Yes? So if the matzah died and now it comes back to life, that's what it says. Choser v'neor. Maran says, not choser v'neor. If something was nullified before Pesach, it doesn't come back to life on Pesach. Rama says, no, in Ashkenaz we have a custom, choser v'neor. The chametz comes back to life in the middle of Pesach. Look at my book. It's one of the 13 differences between Sfaradim and Ashkenazim on Pesach. So now the matzah, you're afraid that maybe there's some part of the matzah that was unbaked or flour or whatever else is going to happen, and the water is going to touch it and it's going to rise on Pesach. So why can you put it in your mouth? Do an experiment. Try this at home. Take flour, fresh flour, put it in your oven and broil it, roast it, and then take it out and try to bake something with it. Your flour is dead. You can't bake with baked flour. I don't know if you know that. It's something you should try at home. The reason why Chachamim throughout history were not concerned with flour being left on the matzot that wasn't fully kneaded or baked, whatever it would be, because there's nothing that can happen with that flour. Flour that is roasted can't rise again. Every baker knows that. The problem is that people who are not bakers are telling the bakers how to bake.
It says in the Torah, parched grain.
That's right.
Pesach.
Well, let's not even go to the kind of grains we could eat on Pesach if we were actually brave enough. Yes.
I guess maybe you couldn't even make a matzah from it. What I was going to say, why don't you just destroy your flour before making your matzot?
But then it wouldn't be a matzah.
It wouldn't stick together.
Because
it would be like baking with breadcrumbs.
Yeah, it wouldn't. Yeah.
Which essentially what people do, they make bread out of matzah meal.
Yeah.
Which is baking with expensive breadcrumbs.
But you have to add a thickening agent to it, like
right. Something else would have to add. That's correct.
You can't do it just on matzah meal.
So back to my kusmin. Thank you. So I don't know what the 5 grains are, but I'm going to translate them the way we translate them in America, and you'll do it the way you want. Kusmin is spelt. Pat-saurin. So you have a loaf made out of barley and a loaf made out of spelt. Mevarech al shel saurim. You make a blessing on the barley. Kevan shehu mimin shiva. Because the barley is one of the 7 species. The ones that are the land of Israel is praised for. And the kusmin are what? Kusmin are one of the 5 grains, but they're not one of the 7 species that Israel is praised for. Afal pisha kusmin yafim. Even though spelt bread is much nicer, much more pleasant than barley bread. But I don't know if you've seen challah made out of kusmin spelt. In Israel, the challah that they make out of kusmin looks beautiful. Beautiful challah. It's even a beautiful color.
We eat it every week.
Isn't spelt one of the 7 grains we consider?
It's one of the 5 grains, but not one of the 7 species.
Oh, sorry.
It's 2 different lists. Yeah, no, so you give preference to the land of Israel over the quality of the bread. Pat nikiya upat kibar, a cleaner flour versus a not so clean flour. Mevarech al nikiya, you generally make a blessing over the cleaner one, unless it's a case like the first one we spoke about. V'im shtehem nikiyot. And if both of them are refined flour, meaning clean flour, sifted flour, so whatever you would like to define that. Forgive me for those who have a bias here, but I'm reading to you what halakha says. V'zo levana yoter mizo, and one is whiter than the other one. Mevarech al levana yoter. You make a blessing on the whiter one. We're not, again, don't think Wonder Bread, chavra. We're not talking Wonder Bread. We're talking about a certain level of quality of flour versus a not such a high quality flour.
The Rambam says it's a sifted regular flour. It's just finer.
Right, no,
So it's a lighter color from that.
from that.
But it's not like modern white flour.
That's right.
Because they didn't bleach it.
Right. And there's no way to take all the bran out.
Look at halakha hey. Essentially, what we're doing is when Maran is saying which bread you make a blessing on, I mean, which if you have two choices, which bread you make hamotzi on? Pat, what does it say in your book? That's good. That's a proper term. My book has the Catholic version of it. Pat goyim, the bread of non-Jews. Nikia, it's of clean flour. Upat kibar shel Israel, and not such great quality flour that's baked by a Jew. So there's two kinds of baked products: Jewish baked products and non-Jewish baked products. Both are kosher. Im einon izhar mipat goyim, if a person is not particular, I mean they're not normally stringent not to buy bread that's baked by goyim, mevarech al ezem mihem shirtzeh. He can bless on any one of them he wants. Vim hu nizhar, because one of them has a preference that it's Jewish bread, one of them has a preference that it's better flour, whatever anyone he wants. Vim hu nizhar mipat goyim, and if he's particular not to eat bread baked by non-Jews, mesadek pat naki shel goyim ma'al hashulchan ad lachar birkat hamotzi. Then he takes away the better bread from the table, and then he makes a hamotzi on the one that is present, which is going to be the Jewish one of inferior quality. Listen to this halakha, because Maran writes this in Yoreh De'ah too, and when I quote this halakha in public, people lose it. It's in Shulchan Aruch. I didn't make it up. It's not Yonatan Halevy's halakha. Vim ba'al habayit einon izhar mipat goyim. And if the host is not particular about pat goyim, then pat goyim ki nikiya, and he intends to eat the better bread that is baked by goyim. But his family prefers to eat from the not such great bread that is baked by a Jew. And both of them are on the table. He has to make a hamotzi on the one that is a non-Jewish bread because it's better. Because he's the one making the blessing. He only wants to eat from that one. This is the halakha I meant to tell you. And if the host is not particular about pat shel goyim, like who? Like me. And a Jew that, no, other way around, not like me. So if a Baal Habayit who is particular not to eat bread baked by non-Jews, meaning like you, and a Jew like me who's not particular about it sits at his table. Let's call them the Pas Yisrael people and the not Pas Yisrael people. So the host is particular not to eat bread from goyim. The Jew, the guest, is particular. He's not particular. He eats whatever he wants. Mesev imo al hashulchan, and the one that is not careful is hosted by the one who is particular. What's the case here? Give me an example. There's a host. This host only keeps Pat Yisrael. You, the guest, don't. On the table, there's two types of bread. A nicer bread baked by goyim, which the host usually wouldn't eat. And an inferior quality bread baked in a Jewish bakery, which the host only is going to eat, but you don't like because it's not of superior quality. Which bread should the host make hamotzi on? Kivan the mitzvah mutelet al Baal Habayit, because the mitzvah of saying hamotzi is on the host. Yivtza min hayafa shel hagoyim. He must make hamotzi on the superior quality bread that is baked by goyim. V'kivan shehutar livtzoa, and because he already has permission to make a hamotzi on it, hutar lechol hasuda, he's able to eat this bread the whole meal.
And that's based on the preference of the guest's desire? That's interesting.
So why is that
I thought he
opposite?
get to choose.
It seems like it's opposite of what one that was right before. Whereas
Didn't you
since he's
say-
making the blessing, it's his
He
choice.
gets to choose.
The previous case, the Balabait would never eat from the other loaf. So because of that, he can't do the hamotzi on it. But here in this case, it's allowed for him to eat from another loaf. So, meaning, in the first case, he didn't want to eat it, not because it wasn't non-Jewish bread, he just didn't want that kind of bread. He wanted the other bread. He wanted the coarser bread. Here he would eat from both. He just has a particular minhag not to eat from that type of bread. So we're saying now that he has a guest who would eat from that type of bread, he's allowed to eat it too. He has to make hamotzi on it. And even though he has to make hamotzi on it, he is allowed to eat it for the rest of the meal, because once it's allowed, it's allowed. You know, the language is better in Shulchan Aruch. Owen, you want to give me a Yoreh De'ah? Actually, I think the one we're looking for is on the bottom shelf. It's going to be Yoreh De'ah, Aleph or Bet. I don't remember that. I don't know the set. It's like laying down on the... Yeah, see over there? Maran writes it better here. Here, yeah. Thank you. Here, Maran says it's so much nicer here. Listen here. Somebody who's not particular about Pat Yisrael. Yeah, he's not particular to, he eats bread from wherever it comes from. And he's eating at a person's house, and that person is particular not to eat bread baked by goyim. And on the table there are two loaves. There's Jewish bread and non-Jewish bread that's superior to the Jewish bread. The Balabait must make a hamotzi on the nicer bread. And that whole meal he's allowed to eat from the bread that's non-Jewish bread that he normally wouldn't eat.
That would never happen today.
Never happened today. That's halakha, by the way.
Yeah.
That's what. Yes.
Curious about the usage of the word mutal there.
He's saying whereas here he says he must, over there he says mutar. Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm saying when is it ever isul for?
Because he holds to himself that it's asul.
But because he's holding it to himself doesn't mean that it is isul to himself.
Right, okay, so then we have to go into the whole conversation. Is bread baked by goyim really permitted or prohibited? That's really the crux of this issue. And the answer is there was a time where bread baked by goyim was prohibited, and there was a time where our rabbis seem to have went back against that prohibition and allowed bread of goyim in particular instances, and different communities and different people accepted different stringencies in different places. You know, all agree that in a pressing situation, you could definitely eat bread baked by a non-Jew. So what's a pressing situation? Some rabbis say a pressing situation is when the Jewish baker is not as good as the non-Jewish baker. Some say a pressing situation is only when the Jewish baker sold out, then you go to the non-Jewish bakery. Some say when you're in a city where there is no Jewish baker. Everyone has a different understanding here, and that's why this halakha is no longer set in stone. In fact, if you read chapter 112 in Yoreh De'ah, Kufid Bet Maran, and you try to figure out what does he hold about bread of goyim, it'll really frustrate you. Because Maran says some say this and some say this, and some say that, and so it's a very indecisive halakha. We know for a fact that we ate always bread of goyim. Sfaradim, Ashkenazim, everybody did it. Until very recently, it was this whole the Kabbalists. There were Kabbalists like that Rizal who didn't eat bread from goyim. Different story. None. But for thousands of years, Jews, your grandparents, my grandparents, all ate bread from goyim. Recently, some Jews decided that it's a problem. But how do you fix any bread that is baked by goyim can become patisah? You know that. Any bread in the world. It's not like food. Once food is cooked by goyim, it's done. Once bread is baked, let's say you take your slice of bread and you put it in the toaster. Now you finish the baking process. I mean, technically, if you want, just bring your pocket blowtorch to the bakery and just blowtorch the croissant a little bit, toast it, heat it up. It's yours. It's baked by a Jew. I used to have arguments. I used to run a bar mitzvah club once upon a time. And there were certain parents that were sending their kids, by the way, for free. I mean, I did a bar mitzvah club for free. And parents would send the kids and then try to restrict what we served at the bar mitzvah club because it wasn't kosher enough for them. So the two wars they had with me, the almond milk, which Baruch and Rachel would buy. The almond milk, some of it says OUD on it, even though it's parve. because made in the same factory. I don't know. It once in one vat looked at the other and waved at the dairy milk. I don't know what happened. They decided this one is dairy now. So because it says OUD, they consider this milk to be non-Chalav Yisrael milk. I said, of course it's not Chalav Yisrael milk because it's made from an almond, not from a cow. But they didn't find it so funny. We had to go and buy double the price. It has some kind of brand of almond milk that had a OU parva or cape on one of those kicks on the parva.
I was going to say, I hope it wasn't Chalav Yisrael.
And then the other thing was the bread. We would buy bread with a kosher symbol on it. But these people have a list of bread with kosher symbols that are not baked by Jews. So it was OU or OK or Chaf K or whatever K it was, kosher, but not Pat Yisrael. I thought I could solve the problem. I toast these bagels anyways in the morning. I do. Yonatan, okay, maybe you should toast them. Because maybe I'm not Jewish enough for you. So but there's a way to make every bread that is Pat Shel Goyim at the Pat Yisrael. No, we don't do that. Why not? We don't. Who's we? The royal we. Who's we? Which book does it say? Oh, they don't even know which book it says that you can't eat that bread. So let alone which book you can. There was two things. I remember they caused me tremendous suffering. Because somehow it was us not being tolerant of other people's customs. You know how that works? We were the intolerant ones.
And you brought the food.
And I paid for it too.
Yeah.
I paid for it. This is a halakha that if you would say today, but what do you mean? You're going to come to my house and change my kosher standards? Yes. I would love to see who explores this in other areas. Like which other area does the guest influence the kosher policies of the household?
Well, what I would say is the not so applicable part of it is who's going to their host's house bringing, okay, now here's all the chalot that I brought, and especially because that's a little bit of chutzpah.
No, imagine this. Imagine you have a guest. You keep Pat Yisrael.
Yeah.
You have a guest, goes to LA, brings you back some gorgeous challah. And it's like, wow. And then you find out, oh my gosh, but it's not Pat Yisrael. That's the kind of situation. They didn't intend to bring you something. So what do? The answer is you make a hamotzi and the one you normally wouldn't eat. You lower your kashrut standard to make a blessing on that which is better.
Assuming that one was better.
Assuming that one is better, correct. Assuming that one is better.
But if the host doesn't like that one, then he would go back to doing the Jewish bread. Because it had to do with taste.
Correct, the taste, right. And we're going to get into the details, the nitty-gritty. But this happens all the time. In the summer, for example, I buy my bread at Costco. They have some good bread, multi-grain bread. I like that bread.
Not the one with cheese melted on it.
No, that's not kosher, that one. And then they bring me some challah that comes from a kosher bakery. The best part is the kosher bakery baked it in Muncie, New York, 3.5 weeks ago. By the time it gets to San Diego, they froze it and defrosted it. And it has the color is neon yellow. You know what I'm talking about? It's like a neon yellow color. Yeah. And it's big challah. You pick it up and it's like, it's air.
A few ounces.
And it's full of sugar. And it's stale.
It's a stale.
It expires in 1.5 days. If you wait till Shabbat lunch to eat it, it will expire. Yeah, you have to eat it Friday night.
It'll turn to orange dust.
And I prefer to make a blessing on the Costco one. What do you mean? There's a challah. That's not a challah. This is Jewish. Man. You should get your books in order. Your facts in order. Your halachot in order. Because tomorrow night, we're going to do a little bit more. We finish this halakha, right? We'll do a little bit more. We didn't finish the Ramah. Did we do the Ramah?
No.
Was there a Ramah?
Yeah, there is.
Where?
Oh,
very good. The Ramah just adds, "V'dafka shechaviv alav otupat." That's only if the bread of the non-Jews is preferable to him. But if he doesn't like that bread, meaning not connected at all to the pat shel goyim, he just doesn't like that bread over there, then he doesn't have to use that bread. So, like you said, the difference in the first case and the second case, in the second case he likes the bread, and in the first case he doesn't like that bread. In the case where he doesn't like the bread, it doesn't make a difference whose gets, or he eats the bread that he likes. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow night.